IVM.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast supported by Pragati, a flagship media initiative of the Takshashila Institution. We're a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like to bring a fresh perspective to Indian affairs and an Indian perspective to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello and welcome to another episode of All Things Policy. I'm your host Shrikrishna Upadhyaya, and the guest on our show today is Dr. Nithiyanandam, the head of Geospatial Research Programme at Takshashila Institution. Welcome to All Things Policy, Nithya.
Hi, Shri. It's my pleasure to be part of this discussion today.
Right. So as a part of the Geospatial Research Programme at Takshashila, Nithya authors a monthly newsletter called the Takshashila Geospatial Bulletin. Earlier this month, he released the issue number 4, which talked of rapid military expansion in Tibet using a satellite imagery analysis. So Nithya used high-resolution satellite images to analyze 3 operational dual-purpose airports and 2 airbases under construction in Central Tibetan region. After looking at all these 5 installations, Nithya asserts in his newsletter that, I quote, China's rapid construction and pace and utilization of cutting-edge technology indicates its commitment to maintaining a long-term presence in the region. End quote. And Indian strategic planners and armed forces must be concerned by these developments in the Central Tibet, as Nithya rightly points out in his newsletter. So Nithya, I want to begin by talking a little bit before the finding of yours of, these 5 airports which have come up in the Central Tibetan region. Because you write that since the confrontation between India and China started in 2017 and escalated between 2020 and 2022 when we had Galwan and all those incidents, China has actually worked towards strengthening the PLA Air Force presence in the regions of Tibet and Xinjiang, which are in fact very close to Indian borders. So the Western Theatre Command of China's PLA, adjoining the Indian territory, has seen a lot of Air Force infrastructure expansion, and it has seen construction of airports, heliports, and other support structures. So let's start here, right? Before we get into your analysis regarding the new constructions in Central Tibet, would you take us through the changes that have taken place in the last half a decade?
Shri, it's an important point to start with. Since 1962 war between India and China, this is one of the major confrontation happened in 2017, a standoff between India and China, especially in Doklam Plateau. So now, since it has happened, China has rapidly expanded their military infrastructure in the region. As you also pointed out, the Western Theatre Command is someone who is responsible for monitoring China's border with India, and they have spent a large amount of investment on building the military infrastructure in this region. The way the things are built is slightly different from many other places. In a sense, it is not just a military infrastructure. It is something where you can see a military infrastructure and also a civilian build-up in that area. That is something we see it as a unique thing, and then that is something which is considered as a sustainable military confrontation for a longer period. And in this case, so what we have seen in last, let's say, half a decade, the rapid expansion in air assets, in addition to other ground assets for military, the Air Force related assets such as the heliports, the air bases, and other infrastructure, air defense systems has been put up on ground in a rapid manner. So that's what we could see. So many new airports, so many dual purpose airports has emerged in this region in recent years, especially the area which are very close to Indian border and also which has strategic importance. So this is a overall development happened, and then once we had subsequent confrontations, in recent years, the speed has increased, and what is astonishing is the rapid pace in which the constructions are made.
Right, and like you point out, much of this air infrastructure, particularly the airports in these remote areas, serve both military and civilian purposes. So this might seem like a rookie question, but I want to know from you, isn't this part of the normal course, for infrastructure in such faraway areas and in such high altitude areas to serve both purposes? Or are you also suggesting, or have you uncovered evidence to suggest that this is a cover for something else and something more sinister is at play as far as the Chinese PLA Air Force is concerned?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. If we look at any airports, let's say what is the necessity for an airport, and let's forget about an airbase. We'll think about a civilian airport. The civilian airport comes in places where there are industrial activity exists, where the human settlements are in high density, where there is a necessity for people to commute between place A to B or place A to different locations around the world or within the country. Um, Here it could be if we think like it is just an airport which is established with dual purpose, as like many airports in the world, it is not the case, because here the density of population living in that area is very less. That's a point to note, because once you have limited number of people possibly utilize the facility, and then you are creating a massive infrastructure that could hold bigger aircraft, and which could also hold bigger military aircrafts and fighter jets and so on, which indicates that the airport is made for dual purpose. And of course, it has been used for civilian purpose to ensure developments in that area. And largely, it can also be used for military purposes because of its strategic location advantage. Let's look at it in this way. For say the Shigatse Airport, if you look at the number of flights per day, that is less in number. Let's say, if I'm not wrong, it is 15 flights per day in Shigatse. So once you have a place which has 15, let's say 15 commercial flights landing on that area, and that is expected to have a very limited activity. But look at the infrastructure being built for those 15 to 13 flights per week. It is massive. And what infrastructure that we can see is more correlated to the military activity likely to happen from that place. And also, the military infrastructure exists are like, you can see aircraft, you can see UAVs, you can see surface to air missile sites. And these are the indicators that this place could have been more used for military purpose compared to a civilian purposes. And if you look at the adjacent areas also, we do not have much of infrastructure exist for civilian activities. We don't have massive industries exist in those regions. We don't have natural resources utilization happening in that. I mean, the regular civilian activities does not exist in that region. So hence, it is believed to be an more of military purpose and less of civilian purpose in this region.
Right. So, other than Shigatse, which you mentioned now, you also looked at the Lhasa Gonggar Airport and the Manling Airport, right? And you analyzed these three in much detail in your newsletter using satellite imagery. So, could you maybe briefly take us through the infrastructural capabilities of these airports? What is visible, what is not? What is the current and the intended usage of these facilities? And most importantly, how the location of these airports is important from the Indian point of view.
Yeah, in this study, we have taken 5 air bases, and out of which Shigatse, Lhasa, Gonggar, Manling are the 3 functional dual purpose air bases, and 2 Shigtase Tingri and Damxung are the air bases which are under construction. So, which is believed to be a military base, and perhaps it may used for little of civilian activities as well. If we look at the functional air bases, the Shigatse, Lhasa, and Manling, all three are having some amount of civilian activity and an extensive air assets in that region. What we have looked at in especially in Shigatse, I will start from Shigatse. We could able to figure out the developments in establishing new SAM sites. SAM sites are surface to air missile sites. When these are the sites which incorporates radars and missiles. When an enemy's the missiles enters into your airspace, and this sites activates and it counterattacks it. Now we have this, and we have underground facilities. We have almost a squadron of fighter jets being placed in Shigatse Peace Airport, and we have UAV hangars, which are new developments. In the sense, the air base is being prepared for hosting advanced UAVs operation from that place, and couple of hard shelters which are used to protect some of the valuable assets in the among the assets which are displayed there. And an auxiliary runway has been there for a while in Shigatse Peace Airport for especially for UAV operations. And interestingly, there is an underground facility is being made, which could likely to possibly to host some of the it could be used as a storage facility for missiles and so on. So this is of Shigatse Peace Airport. Second is Lhasa Gonggar Airport. The Lhasa Gonggar Airport is little busier airport in the region because it is the capital of Tibet, and it takes almost 500 plus weekly flights, and it connects to 29 prominent airports across China. One more thing which is common to all these three airports are these airports connects only to other airports within China. There are no international flights flying to this region. But among the other two, Lhasa Gonggar is something where the airport is very busy, and it connects 29 prominent airports in China. So the important thing to note is it is just 140 kilometers from Bhutan border and approximately 200 kilometers from India's Tawang Air Force Station. Now, given its proximity to Indian border and the kilometers that we are discussing is nothing when it comes to air power, and since it is very close, and we could also find military infrastructure like specific military zones for managing and maintaining the aircrafts in this airport, and several hard structures. There are so many hard structures, 25 plus hard structures exist in Lhasa Gonggar, which is there for protecting important air assets. And also, there is a larger expansion of construction happening on the side which is close to a river. Perhaps that could be isolated for military activities in future. And also, there's a massive underground facilities being built in Lhasa Gonggar Airport. And we could not still able to understand what exactly it could be used for, because it is so massive, and it is the end of the ridge, and it has a lot of structures in between, and it's a huge construction going on. Perhaps it could be a massive command and control facility or any other military related facilities, but we doubt it is it definitely not a civilian facility to come up in that area, because it is very close to the military infrastructure exists in the airport. And the third one is Manling Airport. The Manling Airbase is again it is very close to Indian border, and it do have potential sites like it has advanced military drones placed there, and it has functional surface to air missile sites, and it has dual purpose taxiway. Now, we can see some of these airports are used for UAV operations, some are used for fighter jet operations, some are used for both UAV and fighter jet operations, some are used for transporting goods to the ground forces and so on. So all these possibilities exist when we look at the type of airway and the supported infrastructure being built on the place.
Right. Stay tuned to All Things Policy. We'll be right back after a short commercial break. Also, this aspect of underground facilities is really curious. And, you mentioned that both at Shigatse Peace Airport and Lhasa Gonggar, that underground construction is taking place at the outer reaches of these facilities. And you pointed out it could be, say, a storage facility for missiles or even a command and control centers. So what possible other explanations could be there? Why do you think China is constructing these facilities in such a secretive manner?
Oh, it is. It could be part of their regular way of doing it. So there are certain assets which need to be protected, and which need to be hidden in terms of at the time of war. So what I see here is these underground facilities are it's not kept in a secretive manner, but it is made it in a way like it can be protected, and it is hard structure to break on at the time of the critical situation. So what I see is these structures are very massive, especially the one in Lhasa Gonggar. appears to be very massive, and with a lot of construction activities are happening, and it is of multi-story level. Whereas in case of Shigatse, it is very small. But so the Lhasa Gonggar airport is the Lhasa Gonggar underground facility is very big, and there are limited chances that it could be used for civilian purposes, because a new terminal over there has recently opened, and it is not part of this structure. And this structure is mostly associated to the military infrastructure exists in that region, and it is protected by high-rise walls and so on. This indicates that this could be a facility associated with a military activity itself.
Right. So, while reading about these three airports, one common thread which I came across was all the three of them are capable of handling unmanned aerial vehicles or UAVs, right? Or they have installations of fleets of UAVs, advanced UAV systems, hangars, maintenance facilities for UAVs, and so on, which you were able to point out in your analysis. So, what do you make of these developments regard UAVs and drones as far as China's air power is concerned? What kind of capabilities, according to you, is China building? Is it just surveillance or is it something more?
So the long endurance UAVs are game changers, because those are capable of flying over a longer duration without the requirement of human being on board. And second, these UAVs are largely used for reconnaissance, which is to monitor a larger area on ground. So, for an area which is highly sensitive and which is very complex for an regular pilots to fly, it is China has been increasing its UAV capabilities in this region as well. So, like other countries do increase the UAV based reconnaissance over the years, China has also increased its infrastructure, especially its number of UAVs being deployed, and the type of capability it has been increased over the period. Now this will help them to monitor the area that is of interest in the strategic locations continuously, and even if there is a critical situation, like these assets will not cause any human life as well. So this is economically and operationally it is a little easier than the fighter jets. Of course, fighter jets do have their own benefits and merits, and this is being used for different purposes, and for that China is building its extensive capability in the region.
Right. So, apart from these three airports, you also studied two air bases, right? Namely, Damxung Airbase and Shigatse Tingri Airbase. These are relatively smaller, and much of it seems to be under construction. And these also seem to be relatively new, and they have been built at very impressive altitudes, very high up in the mountains, and they happen to be very close to the Indian border as well. So, could you talk a little bit more about these two air bases and what, according to you, stands out with respect to these two?
Yeah, Damsung is an airbase which is 270 kilometers away from Indian border and at an altitude of 4,300 meters. And it is, it is 90 kilometers from its Tibet's capital, that is from the Lhasa airport. The important thing to note in Damsung Airbase is since 2020, the development in airbase construction has been, fastened, and then now we can see almost fully operational runways which are exist. The runways are ready, it appears, but there is adjacent facilities need to be established. Those facilities, I believe, will come in very few years. Looking at the phases in which the other airports are built, probably in next 3-4 years, this airbase is going to be fully functional airbase. And interestingly, it has pretty long runways of almost 5,000 meters, and it is having big hangars, and it has UAVs capabilities, and it can hold even what do you call the helicopters. And this base is being built on a place which is very remote, like let's say Damsung and also Shigatse Tingri. These are the air bases which are built in a very remote location where I believe the gap was exist earlier for Chinese air forces, and those are filled by having this air bases in these locations. Especially Shigatse Tingri is the one which is again very close to Indian border, and it is a 4.5 kilometer long base. And this airbase has a connectivity to Highway G219 as well. So, what is commonly, there are few things which are commonly standing out from this air bases. And there's an interesting point to note in Shigatse Tingri Airbase. The interesting point is the airbase is located very close to a river, and the river course is modified a bit, and airport is constructed for better operations. So there's no human activities exist near to that airbases. There are small villages; those are small modern villages, and once the airbase exists and once it is connected to highway, we can expect a lot of development in this region, and that too close to Indian border. So this is something where rising an alarm, like you are making people to settle very close to the contested borders and providing them facilities and providing them connectivity to rest of the country. So these are the challenging things coming out because of this airport establishment.
Right. And so let's zoom out a little bit from the discussion we have had so far, where we looked at the specifics with respect to all the airports you have analyzed using satellite imagery, right? Now, if you look at all these 5 facilities in total, a lot of commonalities emerge. And you also point these out, right? First, you say that these are located strategically near water bodies or water resources. Second, these are located at very high altitudes, and they are also located near barren or open lands, which provide ample opportunity for expanding these facilities in the future. And as part of your final analysis, you also write that, and I quote, developments underscore China's heightened combat readiness in the region, signaling a significant shift in military capabilities, end quote. Also, could you elaborate on both these aspects of Chinese thinking and preparation, and perhaps also broadly outline what you think the counter response that Indian strategic planners must work out with regard to these developments in the Tibetan region?
Yeah, first, when it comes to commonality in the region, in this air bases, what we have looked at is the air bases. As I earlier mentioned, the air bases are established for specific purposes in mind. It supports both civilian and military requirements. But if you look at the places where it is located close to water bodies, most of the cases, which provides water requirements. Whatever water requirements are there for construction, consumption, and so on. Those are satisfied because it is next to the river. And second, it also helps to generate electricity, which are required for the operation of the civilian and military infrastructure in the region. Either the requirements are met up with the help of hydropower stations or solar stations, because you can also see massive solar plants being built, especially in case of Shigatse Airport. So I also pointed out in my study that the capacity for solar generation, electricity generated through solar, has been increased several folds over the years. So these are the indicators, let's say the water, the energy, and also shelters. The shelters are established in order to accommodate the civilians, the military personals, and their families. These three indicate that they are planned for sustainable stay in that region, because this part of China is distinct from the other places and it discorded in many aspects. So they are trying to generate food, energy, and other requirements at that particular place itself. So this is a clear indication that the idea is not just to stay for a while. The idea is to stay for a longer period, and it will promote the activities. When you look at the civilian infrastructure in that region, the recreational facilities are created. The water structures are built within the small town. So these are all indicates that there's a possibility that the population will expand in this area in multiple folds, and you can see a huge colony of people moving towards this place, because it has all the infrastructure facilities and the opportunities exist for business development as well. In fact, the recent map released by China also emphasized the utilization of geospatial resources to identify the potential business development opportunities in different parts of China. So this also indicates people of China will also look at the resources which are depicted in different layers of maps and the possibility of business opportunities exist in region. Thus enables them to migrate in this region, and then there can be a substantial growth of population and economic activity in this region. So once it is there, so the disputes and things would be narrated in a way like the people has been there, the Chinese has been there, the people has been there for a longer time, right? So this is one way of occupying and narrating a story of colonization, especially in the confronted regions. So that we can expect it after several years. And as a response to this, of course, we and the Indian side do establish border villages, and they also provided facilities to these border villages. But the massive difference, I should say, when it compared to the Indian side and the Chinese side is the Indian side do have several air dual purpose airports and air bases at present in this region. So what we are seeing developments in Chinese side are something new, because there was no human occupation, there was not much of infrastructure facilities. Now it is built in a massive way. So on one side of us, on our side, it is being built and it is increased and it is strengthened, and the more villages are created closer to the borders. Whereas on the other side, the massive infrastructures are created, and more and more people are migrating toward that places. Though we don't have official numbers, but it is believed through literature that multiple folds of people have been reached as the hot destinations in this border villages. So this will increase, and so what we need to do perhaps is to look at how these activities are being carried out, and whether it is of pure civilian purpose and it is of military nature, and a close monitoring is also required on looking at our own boundaries in regular terms through several reconnaissance and monitoring systems.
Right. So thank you so much, Nithya, for joining me on this podcast today and going through your work on analyzing these 5 airports in the Central Tibetan region and why it should be a matter of concern for India. And for those of our listeners who are interested in geospatial technology and how geospatial resources can come in aid of strategic planning, do follow Nithya's work and his newsletter, the Takshashila Geospatial Bulletin. Thanks once again for joining me on All Things Policy, Nithya.
Thank you, Shri. Thank you, viewers.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @Takshashila INST or our website takshashila.org.in.